Can I be honest with you for a moment? Sometimes life feels like it's moving way too fast, and here we are, sprinting as if the finish line depends on us alone. You've been chasing dreams, chasing promotions, chasing recognition, chasing the next big break, and yet somehow it still feels like everything is slipping through your fingers. And in that moment, God whispers one word: relax. Now, I know that might sound too simple, too easy, too comfortable, because in our world, if you're not hustling, you feel like you're failing. But listen carefully, God isn't saying, stop trying. He's saying, stop trying to force what I'm already working on. When God tells you to relax, He's not telling you to quit. He's telling you to trust. To trust that what belongs to you, what He has already set aside for your life, is coming. You don't have to chase it with anxiety. You don't have to chase it with panic. You don't have to chase it with fear. You chase it with faith, with patience, and with peace in your heart, knowing that the one who created the universe is orchestrating every detail of your story. Think about Abraham for a second. God promised him a son. Abraham waited and waited and waited. And during that waiting, he probably wondered if God had forgotten him. Maybe he even tried to help God out, but the promise didn't come until God's timing was perfect. That's the key. Not your timing, not your push, but God's perfect timing. And that's why God says, relax, because your rush is not helping. Your fear is not helping. Your stress is not helping, but your peace, your trust, that positions you for what's coming. It prepares your heart to receive the blessings, the opportunities, the breakthroughs, and the favor that have already been arranged for you. I know it's hard to relax when bills are piling up. I know it's hard to relax when doors keep closing. I know it's hard to relax when you feel like everyone else is moving faster than you. But here's the truth. The same God who controls the wind and the waves is the same God who controls your life. And if He can part the Red Sea, He can part the obstacles in your life. If He can multiply 5 loaves and 2 fish, He can multiply what you've been waiting on. If He can raise the dead, He can bring your dreams to life. So what does it look like to relax? It looks like stopping the mental gymnastics of trying to figure out how it's going to happen. It looks like letting go of your tight grip on the future. It looks like giving God the room to work in ways you can't even imagine. Relaxing is faith in action. It's saying, God, I can't see it all, but I trust you enough to let go of my grip and let you do your work. And when you do that, something miraculous happens. Your peace grows, your joy increases, your strength returns, and opportunities begin to show up in ways you never expected. It's not about the hustle, it's about the alignment. And God's alignment always produces exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. So today, hear God's voice, relax. Everything will come to you. Stop worrying about the timing. Stop stressing over the process. Stop pushing with fear and start walking in faith. Walk in peace. Walk in expectation. Because God is not late. He is never behind schedule. He is never unfaithful. He is working even now on your behalf. Your dreams are coming. Your breakthrough is coming. Your moment is coming. And when it comes, it will be better than you imagined because it came from the one who knows you completely, loves you endlessly, and has promised you abundantly. So relax, trust Him, and watch God move in ways only He can. Trusting God's timing is one of the hardest lessons to learn in life because we live in a world that glorifies speed, instant results, and immediate gratification. From the moment we wake up, we are bombarded with messages that tell us we need to act fast, get ahead, and achieve more before anyone else does. We check our phones constantly, refreshing emails, scrolling through social media, comparing ourselves to others who seem to be moving faster, earning more, and living bigger. And in the middle of all this noise, God whispers one simple truth: your timing is not your own. When God promises you something, it does not always happen the way you think it should. The promise might come slowly, gradually, in ways that don't make sense to your logic or your calendar. But that does not mean God has forgotten you. That does not mean He is late or that you are being left behind. It simply means He is orchestrating everything with precision, perfection, and purpose. God's timing is always perfect because it is rooted in His wisdom, not in our hurried expectations. Consider the stories in the Bible where God's timing seemed slow or impossible, but His results were extraordinary. Joseph spent years in a pit, in prison, and in obscurity, yet every step was part of a divine plan. If he had tried to rush things, if he had taken matters into his own hands, he would have missed the promotion, the opportunity to save nations, and the fulfillment of God's promise. Abraham and Sarah waited decades for a child. But the child they received was not just any child. He was a miracle, the fulfillment of a covenant that would change history. God's timing may test your patience, stretch your faith, and challenge your understanding, but it always brings about what is best for you in the way that only He can provide. Trusting God's timing requires faith that goes beyond what we can see or touch. It requires a mindset shift from thinking that we have to force life to unfold to recognizing that God is already at work behind the scenes. Faith is not passive, it's active trust. It's showing up faithfully in the everyday, in the mundane, and in the waiting, knowing that God is orchestrating a symphony of events that you cannot yet comprehend. It's trusting that the delays, the detours, and even the disappointments are all instruments of preparation for something greater. One of the reasons we struggle with trusting God's timing is that we often want the promise now, according to our plan. We have an idea of how it should happen, who should be involved, where we should be, and how it should feel. But God's plan rarely looks like ours. God's plan often exceeds our imagination. His plan often comes through doors we didn't even know existed, in ways that seem unconventional, uncomfortable, or inconvenient. And if we refuse to trust His timing, we risk missing the blessings that are already on the way because we are too busy trying to make them happen prematurely. Trusting God's timing also requires patience, and patience is a skill that is learned through practice, not perfection. You cannot force patience. You cultivate it by waiting without anxiety, by believing without seeing, and by persevering even when your faith feels small. Patience teaches you to lean on God rather than lean on your own understanding. It teaches you to surrender control, release fear, and embrace hope. And hope is powerful because it anchors your soul in the promise that God is faithful, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. In addition, trusting God's timing means resisting the temptation to compare your journey with someone else's. Social media has created a culture of comparison, and it is easy to feel behind when you see others reaching milestones faster, achieving dreams quicker, or gaining recognition sooner. But your path is unique. Your season is tailored specifically for you. God's timing is not just about when things happen, it's about how He shapes you during the waiting period so that you are fully ready to receive what He has prepared. Just as a seed must remain buried and unseen for a season before it sprouts and grows, your promise may require a period of quiet, hidden development before it comes to light. Learning to trust God's timing also transforms the way you pray. Often we pray as if God needs a timeline, as if our impatience is a directive to Him. But trust changes prayer into a conversation of faith where we align our desires with God's will, where we submit our agendas to His wisdom, and where we ask for patience and discernment in the waiting. Prayer becomes not just a tool for requesting what we want, but a practice of trusting God's perfect orchestration, asking Him to shape our hearts and thanking Him in advance for what is already on its way. Trusting God's timing is also about believing in His sovereignty over every detail of your life. Nothing is random. Nothing is wasted. Every setback, every delay, every closed door, and every waiting season is part of a divine blueprint designed to position you for the blessings you are about to receive. God is never caught off guard, never surprised, and never powerless. When you trust him, you are acknowledging that his perspective is infinitely bigger than yours and that his plan is infinitely better than anything you could attempt on your own. Finally, trusting God's timing brings peace. It releases anxiety, fear, and the pressure to perform. When you know that God is in control and that everything you are waiting for is already on its way, you can live fully in the present moment. You can rejoice in today without obsessing over tomorrow. You can serve, grow, and love without the constant strain of pushing ahead prematurely. Trusting God's timing does not just change your circumstances, it changes your heart, your perspective, and your life. So when you feel like life is moving too slow or that your breakthrough is delayed, remember that trusting God's timing is not about waiting idly. It's about walking faithfully, believing deeply, and surrendering completely to the one who holds the universe in his hands. Letting go and relaxing is one of the most counterintuitive things you can do in a world that celebrates hustle and constant effort. We have been conditioned to believe that if we don't control every outcome, if we don't push harder, if we don't chase faster, then we will fail. But God's message to your spirit today is simple. Relax. Stop trying to manipulate the circumstances. Stop trying to control the people. Stop trying to force what God has already promised. The truth is, your tight grip on life is actually keeping you from the very thing you are reaching for. Relaxing is not laziness. Relaxing is not giving up. Relaxing is not saying that you don't care. Relaxing is faith in action. It is a conscious choice to stop holding on so tightly to what you cannot control and to trust God with what only he can handle. It's understanding that the weight you carry is not yours to bear alone, and that the God who promised to meet your needs is fully capable of fulfilling every promise in his timing. The peace that comes from letting go is not passive. It is the power of God working through your surrendered heart. Think about the story of Moses in the wilderness. He led a nation of people through uncertainty, chaos, and opposition. But there were moments when God told him to stand back, to lift his staff, and to trust that God would fight for his people. When Moses obeyed and relaxed into God's plan, miracles happened. The Red Sea parted. The impossible became possible. God does not require us to carry the weight of his promises. He requires our faith, our obedience, and our willingness to trust him, even when we cannot see the full picture. Letting go also requires recognizing that worry and fear do not add value to your life. In fact, they rob you of peace, joy, and clarity. Worrying does not speed up God's plan, and fear does not move mountains. But faith, trust, and relaxation in God's hands open the door to his supernatural intervention. When you stop trying to force outcomes, when you stop controlling everything, when you stop micromanaging your future, God has room to move, to work behind the scenes, and to align circumstances in ways that surpass your imagination. Relaxing is also about perspective. When you are anxious, frustrated, or hurried, it is easy to focus on the problem rather than the provider. You fixate on what is not happening, what is delayed, or what seems unfair, and you forget that God is working all things together for your good. Relaxing shifts your focus from the impossible circumstances to the impossible power of God. It allows you to see beyond the momentary setback to the greater plan that he is orchestrating. Your eyes stop being fixed on what you cannot change, and your heart starts to trust in what God is already arranging. Many of us struggle with letting go because we confuse effort with effectiveness. We believe that if we work harder, we will make things happen, but that is not always true. Sometimes our efforts are misdirected, exhausting, or even counterproductive. God's plan is not about how hard you push. It is about how fully you submit. It is not about how much you can control. It is about how much you can trust. There is power in releasing control, in relaxing your grip, and in saying, God, I will do my part, and I trust you to do yours. That is when breakthroughs happen, when doors open, and when blessings flow into your life in ways that exceed human effort. Relaxing also involves humility. It is humbling to admit that you do not have all the answers, that you cannot predict every outcome, and that some things are beyond your control. But humility opens your heart to receive God's wisdom, guidance, and timing. It allows you to accept help, to listen to His voice, and to follow His lead, even when it challenges your own plans. When you are humble enough to let go, you make space for God's power to move freely in your life. Another reason letting go is so important is that it keeps your faith alive. When you are constantly trying to force things, your energy is consumed by worry, frustration, and disappointment. But when you relax, your faith can thrive. You can pray without anxiety, hope without desperation, and live without the constant tension of trying to control the uncontrollable. Your trust in God becomes your anchor, your peace becomes your strength, and your life becomes a testimony of His faithfulness. Relaxing is not always easy. Our natural instinct is to push, to strive, and to take matters into our own hands. But the more you practice letting go, the more natural it becomes. It starts with small steps, releasing minor anxieties, trusting God in everyday situations, and acknowledging His sovereignty over things you cannot fix. Over time, this builds a lifestyle of faith, peace, and expectation that positions you for the blessings God has prepared for you. And let us not forget that relaxing is also an act of obedience. God often commands us to rest, to be still, and to cease striving. It is not because He is inactive or indifferent, but because He wants us to participate in His plan through trust rather than force. Being still before Him, releasing control, and leaning on His promises, powerful spiritual disciplines that align your heart with His will. In the stillness, God works. In the surrender, God moves. In the trust, God reveals His glory. Finally, relaxing is a declaration of faith. It says, God, I believe You are bigger than my problems, stronger than my fears, and more faithful than my circumstances. It acknowledges that while I cannot control everything, there is one who can, and He is fully committed to fulfilling His promises to me. When you relax in God, you are not passive. You are actively engaging your faith, positioning yourself to receive, and declaring that your confidence is not in your efforts, but in God's unchanging character. Expecting the unexpected is one of the most powerful ways to live a life full of faith, hope, and anticipation. Too often, we go through life with limited vision, confined by what we can see, what we can understand, and what seems possible to our human eyes. We make plans, we calculate, we try to predict every step of our journey, and when life doesn't follow our expectations, we get frustrated, discouraged, and anxious. But God calls us to a higher level of living, a level where we anticipate His movement, trust His promises, and believe that blessings often come in ways we could never imagine. When God tells us to expect the unexpected, He's reminding us that His ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. What He has prepared for you may not look like what you have planned. It may not arrive when you expect, in the package you imagine, or through the method you anticipate. But it is always designed to exceed your expectations, to surprise you with His creativity, and to bless you beyond your understanding. God's unexpected ways often challenge us to release our need for control and to embrace the adventure of faith. The Bible is full of stories of people who experienced the unexpected when they trusted God. David was a young shepherd boy who never imagined he would become a king, yet God saw potential where no one else did. Esther was an orphan girl who rose to the position of queen to save her people, a plan she could never have plotted herself. The disciples were fishermen, ordinary men, called to become fishers of men, leaders of a movement that would change the world forever. In each of these stories, the common thread is that God's timing and His methods are often unexpected, and when they unfold, they bring results far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Expecting the unexpected requires faith that goes beyond your circumstances. It requires a willingness to believe that even when things seem delayed, closed, or impossible, God is still at work behind the scenes. It's a mindset that refuses to be limited by logic, human reasoning, or what the eyes can see. Faith opens the door to possibility. It shifts your perspective from focusing on the problems to focusing on the provider. It changes your heart from fear to hope, from worry to anticipation, and from doubt to confident expectation that God is moving in ways you cannot yet comprehend. One of the most challenging aspects of expecting the unexpected is the patience it requires. Human nature wants immediate answers, instant results, and visible evidence of progress. But God's plans often unfold over seasons through layers of preparation, testing, and growth. The unexpected often arrives after periods of waiting. And during that waiting, God is shaping you, strengthening your faith, and positioning you to receive the fullness of what He has promised. Patience is not passive. It is active faith. It is trust that God's timeline is perfect, even when it contradicts your own sense of urgency. Expecting the unexpected also means releasing control over the how and the when. We tend to obsess over details, how we will get there, what it will look like, who will be involved, and what the path will be. But God's ways are not our ways, and His methods are not ours to dictate. The moment we surrender the need to control every step, we allow God to move in ways that surpass our imagination. Some of the greatest blessings in life come when we let go of the need to orchestrate every detail and allow God to reveal His plan in His perfect timing. This expectation is not wishful thinking. It is rooted in God's promises. When God says that He will supply, protect, provide, and guide, He is not offering abstract hope. He is offering guaranteed outcomes that are anchored in His character. Expecting the unexpected means believing that